So last Sunday, I left here feeling really charged after service. And I had a great day, very peaceful day, meditated, did things with the family. And that night I went to bed and I was sleeping really sound. And in the midst of the night at 2 o'clock, this screamed at me. Just screamed at me. It said, "It just takes time." And that thought just kept screaming at me. I was lying wide awake, and those 4 words just come over and over and over to me. It just takes time. And so I got up and I went downstairs and I wrote it down. And I'm grateful because when I woke up in the morning, I'd forgotten those 4 words. I don't know how you are, but a lot of times for me, when I'm in the midst of my sleep, something comes to me, and if I don't write it down, it slips into the ethers. Well, throughout the week, those words have been processing with me. And what I've come to look at it, when I look at it from this perspective, in humanness, we have time. In the divine, there is no time. So we're living in a paradox. We're living in a paradox, and Eckhart Tolle goes, there's only the now, right? And you hear that from all the gurus. There's only the now, there's only the now, there's only the now. But yet, we're living in human form, and there's time. And so, an individual asked me this question. Why is it that you're promoting a fundraiser for a minister? Shouldn't that minister know how to heal themselves? After all, they teach this stuff, right? And what came to me was, there's a difference between awareness and self-awareness. There's a huge difference there. Awareness is in time. Self-awareness is in the now. And the now means pure oneness. You're in the state of connection with the divine where there is no separation, there is no judgment, there is no attachment. And that is what people have been seeking for eternity. Anytime we go into judgment about someone, anytime we go into attachment about something being a specific way, we are thoroughly, completely out of oneness. We are thoroughly and completely living in ego, which means we are living separate from the divine. And in that livingness, there's pain. You see, there's no pain when you're in the now because there's nothing you're attached to. You're not judging anything. So it just takes time. So I'm going to start interweaving the thoughts I want to present to you with a story that happened this week. Because there's no coincidences that you attract what you're experiencing. So I'm going to take you to about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, my mother passed. And I was with my mom for 5 months before she made her transition. And before she got to the last stages where she couldn't talk, she said to me this. She said, "Lee, leave your father in the house as long as he's able to drive. When he's not able to drive, help him get in assisted living." Okay? So I've held in consciousness. I follow up with my dad. I've been the son that's been overseeing everything. And my prayer is that whatever the transition is, that it's easy, it's effortless, and it's smooth. So I'm praying about that. I'm talking about that with my dad. I've said, "Dad, we have an agreement that when you tell me it's time, we will move." This Thursday evening, I got a call. I don't know if it was Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday. Time runs together. There is no time. Doesn't matter. I got a call, and the call was from my sister, and she had been notified that my father had been in an accident. And what had happened was my father had been driving around that day. He's 87 and a half years of age. He'd been driving around that day, and he was sort of weaving in and out of the lanes. And a police officer pulled him over and said, "Are you okay, sir?" And he says, but he felt a little disconnected. So the officer gave him a warning. Apparently, my dad continued to drive around. A half hour later, the same officer found him, and he had hit someone, hit a car. No one was hurt, no serious damage. The officer at that time took his driver's license and says, in order for you to drive, you're going to have to go in front of the magistrate, and they're going to have to deem that you're ready to drive. That brought everything full circle. My father now is no longer able to drive. Now, I want you to understand is that, I don't know, you probably have the same feelings I do. When you think about your father is the person who was strong, who was the rock, who could do anything. At least that's what my father was for me. My father is the man who led the family, who was always there. He was the strength. You needed anything done, Dad did it. He was that hard Polish ethnic type of lifestyle that he lived. And I don't know if you understand that, but if you have Polish in you and you have that type of heritage, you'll understand what I'm saying. Like every nationality has traits that they're proud of in that. Well, the Polish people are very proud of that hardworkingness, and they're the foundation. Well, all of a sudden, that role is shifted. And so the next morning, it became the time that I didn't know what to do. I want you to know I lied awake all night praying because I didn't know what to do. In my humanness, I had no clue. And the last prayer I did was, I turn it over to that which is in me, that knows what to do, and I know that it will guide me every step that I need to take. And so the next morning I got up and I called the assisted living center that I know that's right there on the island of Maui, right in the same part of town where he lives. And I got a hold of the sales guy, introduced myself, established rapport, said, this is what I'm looking for. Can you make this happen? He said, I'll get back to you in a couple hours. I was going to wait a couple hours, and my dad called, and I said, Dad, it's time we have a father and son talk. And he says, I know. And we chatted about what had happened. And I said, Dad, you're not going to be able to drive anymore. And Dad, if you can't drive, we've got to make other arrangements. And I laid out the whole thing. And as I laid it out, I remember laying it out with a consciousness that it is not a son talking to the father, but it is an individualization of God talking to another individualization of God. And because of the prayer work that I've done, and that's how I see my Father as God in expression, doing that which is natural in human form, there was a shift, and he opened to the possibility. Open to the possibility, because I don't want to force it. You know, you've got to allow time. You're hearing that? There's instantaneous demonstrations of prayer are, in my mind, myths. The possibility exists. The reality is we're in human form, okay? And what is the reality? Jesus said it so clearly. It is done unto us as we believe. Now, can you take a belief that is here and instantaneously go to a belief that is here? No, it's not possible. I've not seen it. But what I can see is that you build your belief and you move up the ladder, and as your belief shifts, your experience shifts, because when your belief shifts, you're creating a new mental atmosphere. With the new mental atmosphere, you attract to you. So what had happened there was this seed fully planted in my dad, right? Okay, so if it's just about time, you got to leave that seed grow. And so you hang up the phone, and what's the next thing you do? The next thing that happened was a gentleman at the assisted living called back, here are your options. And I said, that's great, but can we do something better? I says, I'm always told that when someone gives you something, there's always a negotiation that can happen. And so I'm a believer in that. So I negotiated with him, and we've got a better type of possibility. So in the meantime, I talked with my sister. I talked with some friends that are a part of her neighborhood, another man who's a support community, and all of a sudden, there was an energy shifting. That afternoon in Maui time, evening Dallas time, a husband and wife who were neighbors heard what I had done and went over and talked to my dad. They, in fact, not only talked to him, they took him over to the assisted living center. They took him over to the room that he would be in. They took him over and showed him the theater room, showed him the dining room, that he would have 3 meals a day. And you see what's happening. It's just about time, right? Well, you're letting it go. Now, I want to share with you now, okay, so I'm having an experience, right? That's the only thing I can control. That's the only thing you control is your experience. You cannot control your father, your mother's, your husband, your wife's, your kids'. You can control yours. So what's happening through this is that I don't know about you, but I'm racing. My mind is going 1,000 miles an hour. What's my next step? What's my next step? That's when I pull out my prayer beads. And I go back to my prayers. I go back to my affirmations. I said, I've got to maintain my consciousness. If I don't maintain my consciousness, then I'm subject to the law of average, and I'm going to be in a position where I could be a victim. I'm not going to allow that. So I kept doing that. And you see, I said, can I even meditate feeling like this? Because my mind is going so fast. And I sat down. And the meditation that I did that day was one that I've used a couple times in class recently, where I just closed my eyes. I took 4 deep breaths, and I focused on feeling the energy in my hands. That's all I did for 15 minutes. But in that 15 minutes, I stopped thought. When I stopped thought, I came out of it. I could think about what is the next step and the next step. So the next morning, morning Maui time, afternoon Dallas time, I called, talked to my father. The transition happened like this. Yes, I'm ready to make the move. Okay? From that standpoint, I said, and the concern came up, how do I do this? How do I do this? I said, Dad, let it go. I know how to do this. Or let me say this, there's an aspect in me that I've not identified yet that knows how to do this. And so I kept saying, so I got off the phone, and immediately what I did after I got off the phone with my dad is I stopped and just gave thanks. I literally started to weep because my prayer had been answered. It wasn't simple, but yet I trusted the process. I knew it took time, and I allowed that time to demonstrate, and it did. So now I took time to be grateful. I settled into this atmosphere of gratitude. And in that gratitude, the next thing that popped out of me was, this is what you got to do next. This is what you got to do next. This is what you got to do next. So now we've got the big things already aligned, being moved by movers. We've got the people that are there going over this weekend, that telling him what he needs, helping him pack that, getting him moved. We've got his mail being moved. We've got his cable and internet being moved. We've got all these things. We even have a possible renter of the house already, and we haven't even moved out. You see, it's about planting the seed. It's about holding the vision and staying in that. So, Patty, pop it up. The process of creating is the mental work and the time it takes to convince ourselves of our oneness. So it's the mental work, it's the prayer, it's the affirmations, it's the visualization, it's the forgiveness work, it's the gratitude work, it's the journaling. That is the mental work. And it's also the inspired action that follows that. You cannot have a demonstration without inspired action, because why? If you're not taking inspired action on what you're thinking about, it means you don't believe it. Because if you believed it, you would be acting in accordance with what you desire. You see how that flows? So you cannot have just thought words. You've got to have the actions associated with it as well. And so if you do that, then there's the time it takes. You see, there's that word time. It takes time to do what? To convince ourselves that we're one with God and that we're creating our life, and that the power to do it, it's within us. And when we get to that point, we're done. You can take this with respect to the situation I talked about with my dad, or you can take this into the situation of healing yourself. There is no process of healing. Are you hearing that? There is a process in healing, and they're very different. A process of healing is the revelation of oneness. The process in healing is getting to oneness. Now, in our human form, action has to happen. And I fully understand that. So in our human form, when we go to the aspect of healing, it's about first you've got to create the possibility in your mind, the possibility. Then you have to build an imagination around that. You have to see it. You have to feel it. Hear that second word. It's not just see it. It's not just talk about it. You've got to feel it, because the feeling is what anchors it into you. And when you feel it, there is a shift. There's a shift in your vibration that happens. So you see it, you imagine it, you talk about it, you feel it. Now you take inspired action. That inspired action can come from a lot of different ways. If you're doing a healing thing, it could come from going to a regular doctor. Because what is a regular doctor doing? Regular doctor is simply relieving the symptoms of what appears to be a disease, which is purely a disconnection from all that is. So if you take that approach, they're treating the symptoms. Well, that's allowing the body time to heal itself, because that's what's going to heal it. The natural flow of divine energy within you is what heals you. The doctors don't heal you. The medicine don't heal you. They give you the time for your body to do that. You could take another approach, and you could do a holistic approach. If you got the ability to build the belief and go to the state of oneness, you could say that I know that if I eat pure foods, organic foods, I juice, I do this, I do that, I do this and that, I know that that happens. You see, it doesn't matter what you do. It's what do you believe. That is the key about it. If you do not have the belief, that's why you can have 10 patients who are identical in their stature with whatever the disease is. They will all have different experiences at different times because they all have different beliefs. So the amount of time that has to happen is the process of building the belief in between. That time in between, this came to me, and I shared this in one of the classes this week, is I was raised as a Catholic, okay? And so in Catholic, you're living on human form. And if you're okay, you're not real good, but you're not real bad, you're going to end up in purgatory. Purgatory's like the waiting station, where you got to sort of wait and see if the good guy's going to let you up there, or maybe he's going to throw you down and put you in front of the sharks for a while. I don't know what he's going to do, but what I came to understand was purgatory is really the time in between praying and having the experience that you want. It's the in-between time. It's the time that's the most uncomfortable. It's when you have your doubts. It's when you have your fears. It's when you have all of these. This is maybe when you want to complain to someone. Woe me, I need to be a victim. Please listen to my victimhood. This is when that happens. It's in the in-between stage. And how we respond in the in-between stage will determine how much time we stay in that stage. You see that? So if you have a really good friend and they come to you and they're in that in-between stage and they start to complain, I would gently say to them, let's focus on something else, because I don't want to see you stay in this stage. More importantly, do it for yourself so you don't stay in the stage. Remember, we've got these out there. These are our complaint-free bands. We've talked about that before. You put one on. You complain, you move it to this hand. You complain, you move it to this hand. And every time you move it, you start day one over again. And you try to go 21 days without complaining. I'm really pretty good about that now. So my smart aleck son says, Dad, my loving and kind and wise son says, Dad, you need to do that about sarcasm. Because in reality, sarcasm is a way of complaining and getting away with it because you're using humor. And so there's always work to do. Can I say that? I'm good about not the direct complaint, but I've been masking it by doing the sarcasm. And you see, when I do that, the sarcasm keeps me where? It keeps me in time. It keeps me in the in-between state. That's really the key that happens, is that we have to make the decision. Well, do whatever you want to do. No one here is going to tell you to complain or not complain. But we're going to tell you the law is always working, and the law is always going to give back to you that which your mental atmosphere is. And if your mental atmosphere is not complaining, it's not sarcastic, it is knowing the end result and being in oneness, the result is there. That's why we have spiritual practice. This is what I can say to you. This morning, obviously I'm not totally at peace with what's going on. There's so much to do. When you got to move someone out of a house, you've got a house to get fixed, you got to move everything, all that stuff. Your mind is going like this. So every morning, the last three mornings, I'm up at 2:33 in the morning, and my mind is racing. And what I do is I go downstairs, so I don't disturb my wife, and I go downstairs and I try to meditate. And I set my timer on my thing for an hour meditation. When I'm done with the meditation, if I'm not feeling tired, I pull out my prayer beads, or I start praying. By the time I'm done with that, I'm ready to go back to sleep. See, I'm not going to sit there and allow the thoughts to fester, because that's what happens when we're in a state of discontent, okay? We lie there, we'll let the thoughts, and the thoughts now are going in a direction we don't want. We haven't taken control of them, and in that festering, we're putting ourselves deeper, deeper, and deeper into the in-between state. So when I say it just takes time, it just takes time depending how long you want to stay there. And you see, that's a personal choice that only you can make. You can't help anyone speed up that choice. It's impossible. Only you can speed it up by you building your belief towards something. See, there's a process of building belief. And what is a belief? It's a thought you think over and over and over again. That's it. There's nothing magical about it. It is not a truth. A belief is not a truth. The only thing that we have as a leap of faith at Agape is that God is infinite. That's it. That's the only thing you have to take on faith. Because if you believe that God is infinite, then you believe that God is everything. You believe that God has created everything out of itself and everything is an expression of God. And if you believe that God is everything and everything is an expression of God, then you believe that you are the expression of God. You are whole, perfect, and complete and unique, just as you are, as we are, as everyone is. It's not just this group, it's everyone everywhere is that. If you see someone that's not God, then you don't know your God. Because the allness of God cannot see anything except itself. There's nothing for it to compare to. So in the human form, when we start judging, when we start complaining, we see things as different, and we take things personally, and we make assumptions, and we do all of these things, we don't see God. We're living in that state of duality. We're living in that state of disconnection. We're living in that state where no matter what we do, we cannot resolve within our minds and receive inner peace. But the second we can see God, we take a breath and we settle into that breath. The interesting thing is I started telling you a story. And guess what? There's no ending. Because the story's continuing. Isn't that what our life is? Isn't our life about a story that we're building every moment? And so we think we're going to get to the end and we're going to get happy. We think that we're in the midst of something, like I'm in the midst of working with my dad. I can be happy doing that. You see, that's the choice. I can remember being by my mother's bedside as she was dying. I could be happy or I could be depressed. I chose to be happy. Why? Because I focused on the beauty that this woman was in the world, and that's what I lived in, because I am the living expression of the traits that she brought forth. The givingness that was my mother is the givingness that I am. My mother was sort of hard face, little Italian lady, and yet underneath was a heart of pure love. Givingness. My mother taught me the lesson, though, when you give, Lee, you've got to receive. See, that's a lesson that we all can learn from. Because when we're giving, we've got to be able to take in. And some people are better take-inners than givers. And so if you want to have the flow, you've got to use your time to be giving and your time to receive. What is it? The Byrds did the song, to every time there is a season. Think about that. There's seasons, and those seasons are the natural flow of life. The question is, where do you want to be in that flow? How do you want to be in that flow? You see, I'll tell you this. It's your choice. You get to choose how you experience God. You get to choose how you experience life. What we do at Agape is we're here to love you. We're here to support you. Our role here is to create a safe place where everyone can come, no matter who you are, and do the work and find oneness. Let's go within. And let's experience that right now. I want to thank you for joining us today. I am so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask you to go to our website. Once there, click on the Contribute button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to the world. I would also ask you to please share this message with anyone you feel might benefit. Again, I want to thank you for joining me and the Agape community as together we bring joy to life.